Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Just Among Friends. I'm Lori Hines. I'm your co-host here, along with my friend Ann Stacy with Texans for a Safe Israel, and Mike Isley with Texans for Israel, and myself with A Taste of Israel, where we host guest speakers that align with our mission of cultivating hearts to align with the Jewish people and the land of Israel. So we are very excited to share another episode with you today, today's live session. But before we get to today's speaker, I want to give a shout out to our upcoming speakers. So next Sunday, October 24th, will be another live session where we will be hosting Dr. Rivka Lambert-Adler, an author and Jewish educator, coming to us directly from the land of Israel, live Sunday, October 24th. You don't want to miss that. Her work that she's doing is incredible, and it's going to tie into, I think, today's speaker also a little bit. We'll see. Followed by Dr. Adler will be Natalie Sopinski, lawyer, lecturer, and director of development for Rescuers Without Borders Israel. We just had the privilege of visiting with Natalie in person in Texas. She is a powerhouse. You do not want to miss that recording. And then followed by Natalie will be our friend Ishai Fleischer, the international spokesperson for the Jewish community of Hebron in Judea, Israel. That will be a recorded session. Both he and Natalie are both recorded. So we're excited, man. Each time we think this is the best one, then nope, the next one. They're just such rock stars, our speakers are, and we are honored to have them. Which brings us to today's rock star, which is our friend Eliyahu Adam Berkowitz. He is an author and journalist for Israel 365 Media Company out of Israel. Let's give a warm welcome to Adam. Welcome, Adam. We're excited to have you.
Hi, y'all. So I understood that the subject is prophecy unfolding.
Yes, redemption. Yes, tell us more.
So what I want to say is about 6 or 7 years ago, I was desperate for a job. I was a professional cook for many, many years. I milked cows for about 5 years, did a lot of things, worked construction. I also spent a lot of time in yeshiva, but I moved up to the Golan. I couldn't get a job. And so I tried out for a writing job because I love writing. And I got the job. And Tuli Weiss, the head of Israel 365, said to me, I want you to write about Geula, the redemption, as it's happening right now. And I want articles every day on it. Can you do it? And I was desperate for a job. So I said, sure. And the thing is, once you start doing that, you can't unsee it. It's happening every single day. It's really just a matter of, I remember I used to teach Sefer Shmuel, the book of Samuel. And there's a couple of different ways to read the Bible. One of them is, to learn the wisdom or to learn the commandments or all kinds of things. Another thing is to learn it straight up as just a very, as it's read, history book. And the book of Samuel was just one headline after another. And that's what I do every day. I wake up and we're really living in very blessed times. I mean, if you had lived 100 years ago and you were reading the prophecies, whether you were Jewish or Christian, reading the prophecies about the Jews coming back to Israel, God bringing us back to the land of Israel, that's like science fiction. It's an impossibility. It could never happen. And here we are, we take it for granted. I remember going to Jerusalem on Jerusalem Day, and I remember thinking, my grandfather, God bless him, he was born into a world without Israel, and he'd never been in Israel. My father, blessed memory, he knew what it was like to live in a world without Jerusalem. And I merited taking my father to Jerusalem for the very first time, taking my father to the Western Wall for the first time. I never knew what it was like to live in a world without Jerusalem. I was very young in 1967. And my children, they were all born in Israel. And God willing, one day my children will be like, Abba, what was it like to live in a world without Mashiach, without the Messiah, without the temple? We're really moving forward. And all you have to do is just read the prophets and the writings, read them not as an allegory, but read them as tomorrow's headlines, today's headlines. Time after time, I read about things. I remember one of my articles that went crazy was there, because of the Dead Sea Works, which is also a parallel factory on the Jordanian side. The Dead Sea is disappearing. I remember when I first went to see it when I was 17, the Dead Sea was complete. Now I look at it and you can walk from Israel to Jordan. It's disappearing because they're evaporating the water, and there's sinkholes on the shoreline that are filling up with brackish water and are filling up with fish. Now, we know that fish is a nice allegory, but we also know that that's the prophecy. And I got to tell you, the Christians tend to know the prophets better than I do. You guys can pull out the verses like that, and we don't do that. I think the reason is that the Jews didn't emphasize it because it's a little hard to learn about King David when you're living in Poland or when you're living in the exile. It's hard to read. It's really, really hard as a Jew to read the prophets and the writings while you're living in the exile in Europe and you're being oppressed. It means something very, very different when you're in Israel. I know Tommy Waller, he came to Israel and he was touring around and he saw grapes growing in Samaria. And he said, I know that. I just never thought they meant actual real grapes in front of me.
Yes. Yes.
And if you think about it, I mean, there were very, very holy people who came before us who never merited to see literally, word for word, the prophecy. You take a bus in Jerusalem, you see kids playing in the streets. You know, I love it. You go to Ben Yehuda, where all the falafel stores are, and you see the teenagers hanging out. God bless them, you know? And you see the old men hanging out, no comment.
Yes.
It's like, that is what I write about. Yes. And it's really, all you have to do is learn to read the Bible a little bit differently. See it as headlines, and you'll see it right in front of your eyes. Yes. Time after time, in everything, everything.
I have to jump in and I'm so excited when you talk. I mean, this is really a conversational format. We're going to open up for anybody to contribute. But after you give, the bulk, but I just say yes. I mean, it's so true. Even for people who have never been to Israel, we tell them, guys, if you want to see the Bible come to life, Christian, Jew, whatever, go to Israel. There's nowhere on planet Earth like it. It will change you. So yes, I'm clapping. I
remember the first time I was in Israel, I was 17 years old, and I was not religious. And I came on a not religious Jewish tour. It was different back then. Even not religious Jews were very connected to Israel. And we went to En-Gedi. And En-Gedi is this, it's in a ravine, you have basically the desert, and then all of a sudden there's this green ravine with the water in it. And the tour guide, who was also not a religious Israeli woman, she took us up to this plateau, and we're looking down at the water and the green, and she said, this plateau is where King David, camped out when he was faced off against King Saul, who was, he wasn't king then, King David. And down there was where Saul was. And I'm like, wait. What do you mean? I'm standing on this plateau. It's like 100 meters square. I said, what do you mean? You mean like, why this, out of all of Israel? And she said, well, it says he was at, Nahal En-Gedi. You don't see another water source anywhere else. This is it. And the only place where there's a little plateau overlooking the spring is right here. So we know that he was, and I'm like, whoa. You mean King David with the harp and Psalms and all that other, and Goliath? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, 100. So if I walk all over this, I've absolutely certainly walked somewhere where he was. And she's like, yeah. And I was 17 years old, not religious, and I had just had my mind blown 30 different ways. Wow. Because that's inevitable if you anywhere you go in Israel. Yes. There was never, ever any other Jerusalem. So anything you read about Jerusalem, if you go into Jerusalem, that's where it was. So that's the connection. And so when they start talking about the prophecies, also exactly the same thing. And the more they happen, come on, if someone says A, B, and then C and D happens, well, E is right down the line. And that's where we are right now.
Right.
So.
Wow. So powerful, huh? You're right. We talk about this a lot, how the air, even in Israel, is tangible. It's different, especially in Jerusalem, So,
Well,
tell me about, okay, let's talk about current events and headlines. I think that no matter where we stand politically in today's climate, some people feel like things are headed in a really scary, bad way. And some people on the opposite end feel like things are going according to how they wanted to go. And so for those people who may think that things are going in a bad direction, related to redemption, what would you say to that?
well, first of all, the thing about prophecy is, what the end is.
Yeah,
I mean, we know where it's going.
it's true.
It's not a question of what's going to happen. The question is, how exactly is it going to get there? And even that, we have some good ideas. The sources that I connect to, they're really very special. I interview people not because they're famous or because they're movers or shakers. I interview people because I love them.
Aww.
And Rav Pinchas Winston he's brilliant. He's one of the few rabbis who really is an expert on redemption, and the Jewish sources for redemption. And he explained that we saw this in Egypt, that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Why? Because it sounds like he took away his free will, but he actually gave him his free will. Why? Because he said to him, look, a normal person would say, I really wish I could keep the Jews here, but all of these plagues, I can't stand it anymore. Go away. I'll let them go. But what did God say? God said, look, I'm going to make it so that you can stand up to the plagues. I want to know what your heart really is saying. Okay. I want to see who you are, where you're standing. And I'm going to make you strong enough to express that. And that's that's what's happening today. And as an old school hippie, I can tell you, it's the real question. The reason why things are so polarized today, like I've never seen it before, is God, it's not a question of what's going to happen, because we know what's going to happen. The question is, how do you fit in? Which side did you choose? And it's like the end of days is like a game of musical chairs. And you're going to be left standing. And that's something that I've seen as an old school hippie. I can tell you, when I was 17 years old and I was in college and I wasn't religious, people were talking about abortion. I'm like, sounds reasonable. I can understand. Now that what they're talking about is something totally different that we were not talking about back then. They're talking about horrible, horrifying things. Back then, they were saying, Israel, but the poor Palestinians, but Israel, they need it. Now it's just like, oh no, Israel is the Nazis. They turned it up way too far. It's really hardened hearts so that, in the when it comes time for people, for God to say, okay, this is where you were. This is who you were. This is the side you choose. No one can stand up and say, oh no, you misunderstood me. We know what's going to happen. We know where it's going. And the question is going to be, where did you stand at that time? And there's not really going to be any question, because people right now are expressing themselves 130%. So that's why, I mean, if you're standing on the right side, and just like the people who are standing on the bad side in ways that I've never seen before, a man is a woman, this is crazy talk. Okay. But when the time comes, when the time comes, they're not going to be able to fake it.
Right.
And also, that's another thing that wasn't so much explicitly understood as being in the Bible, which is the purest sign that we're coming up on the end of days, is a lot of evangelicals who used to be very much against Israel. Well, that certainly changed.
Tell
And
us
and
how do you see,
all
as a Jew, how do you see this change?
well, that's first of all, that's it's unprecedented. It certainly is not consistent with what we've seen as 2,000 years of history.
Mm,
Um,
thank you.
and I see it. We have a in the Talmud they talk about Psalm 126,
Mm,
and it comes in a part of the Gemara in the Talmud where they talk about how Jews are not allowed to be happy since the temple was destroyed. We can be a little bit happy, but not completely happy. And then it talks about that's why we break glass at a wedding. And then it says, well, when can we be happy? When can the Jews be happy? When the nations come up to us and say, how wonderful it is what God did for you Jews. That's when the Jews can be fully happy. And I
well,
think I think that's what we're seeing now.
okay, interesting. I know that I've either read something that you've written or we've spoken about this, about more and more Orthodox Jews are seeing, even Christians, evangelicals, what have you, turn a corner and have a completely different mindset than our forefathers in the church. And we're really fighting an uphill battle to
Yeah.
get more Christians to see the truth of the matter, of the history of the church against the Jews, and the ninth of awe, what you're referring to in Psalm 126, and the importance of that, and the obligation we have as Christians to help bring that joy to you and help turn your sorrow into joy, because we do stand shoulder to shoulder with you, and we have seen what God has done for you in your land, and we want to serve that God alongside of you.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I'm in.
I'm-
Yeah. When you talked about the uphill battle, I thought you were talking about from our side.
Oh,
There's a lot of resistance, reticence from Jews, not just Orthodox Jews. Strangely enough, the secular left-wing Jews are even more resistant to connecting with the evangelicals, because the evangelicals say that we're here because of the Bible.
that's right.
And the secular Jews don't want to hear that.
That's right. That's right.
That's a really big thing. It's very painful.
Yes.
So that's from my side. I have to help open up that door. We talked about something else that I really need to emphasize. The issue of proselytizing.
Let's talk about that, please. The mic is
Really?
yours, my friend. Yes.
We're gonna have a big person talk.
Let's have a
Yeah.
big person talk, please.
Okay. In my humble opinion, replacement theology has been horribly damaging, horribly destructive to Christianity. It's taken the Bible away from you. You have to read the Bible differently, because you can't read the simple reading. That's what I was talking about before. We're talking about a land of Israel. We're talking about the Jews. Israel is a nation. Israel is the land. And that's been horribly destructive. And the only way you can, and to be honest, the first time replacement theology was explained to me, it made sense. It was the Jews were obviously not being able to do God's will. So, and I wouldn't say we were being punished. We were taken out of Israel, but not as a punishment. And so someone had to do it. So thank God the Christians picked up the ball. But obviously we're back. The covenant was eternal. The covenant is very clearly still in place and never went away. And the covenant demands from the Jews that we be a nation of priests, which means that we are here to serve. The priest does not bring his own sacrifice, or most of the time is not bringing his own sacrifice. We serve a purpose. And when King Shlomo and King Solomon dedicated the temple, like the second thing he said, and I'd never noticed it until I started writing these articles, was he said, that the prayers of the foreigner should be accepted. that's our function, which means we don't do that function unless people come from outside to serve God. But that being said, the prophets say that the Jews are going to be here. The prophets say we have a function. And if you convert us, I understand that for Christians, preaching the gospel is an act of love. I compare it to insisting that a diabetic eats candy.
Interesting.
You may intend to be doing something very loving, but you're actually doing serious damage.
Right.
It's, they say a lot of different things, like, and you have to understand, that's for me, it's bilateral. I don't think that Christians should become Jews.
Right.
I try to explain to people, I love to talk to Christians about their belief in Jesus. It has no relevance to me, but as a belief and a faith in the divine, it's hugely inspiring. And it will never have anything to do with my faith or my belief.
Yeah.
And I think that's, we have to walk hand in hand, each in our own path. And, there's a lot of ways they say it. Jesus was the Messiah for the Jews, or the Jewish Messiah. He was not the Messiah for the Jews. He was a Jew, and you consider him to be the Messiah. He has no relevance to me as the Messiah. I've heard the expression, and this is one of the expressions that I really dislike. What's the expression? Fulfilled Jews? Jews who's accepted.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just like, no.
A completed
Jew?
Yeah.
No, really not. It's like you've taken a Jew out of the water. It's not Jewish. We don't do that. We don't have that faith, and we're not supposed to. For the prophecies to happen, we have to remain Jewish. We have to remain faithful. We have to remain in the covenant.
Yes, yeah, that's the word right there I'm looking for. I was going to say this, and we've had this conversation more than once with many of our Orthodox Jewish speakers, and even some of our Christian speakers, that I think I'm safe to include Ann and Mike in this, believe strongly that the problem with Christians, the disconnect, is that we don't understand covenant. We don't understand covenant. And thank God y'all are in covenant with God, because you guys are the ones who were given the oracles and the blueprint for living and having a relationship with God. And the way we define our salvation is not the same way as y'all define your salvation, and that's okay. And so that's where Christianity has gotten it so wrong, and we're so sorry, but we're learning. We're slow, but we're learning that you guys are in covenant and it is eternal, and we are here to learn from you because you guys have kept it more than us. And so you're
I think one of the reasons is also a major difference between Judaism and Christianity. Christianity is a religion, it's a faith. You're Christian because you believe in Jesus. Judaism is not a religion. Judaism is a nation. We received the Torah as a nation. We do the mitzvahs as a nation. I don't do all the mitzvahs. I can't do all the mitzvahs because there are mitzvahs that, there's certain times of the year. There's mitzvahs for the Kohanim, for the Leviim. There's mitzvahs that you do, during the sabbatical year. I can't do all the mitzvahs, certainly not all the time. But as a nation, we do keep all the mitzvahs. And we have always kept all the mitzvahs, because Torah is a nation. Torah is not what I do. It's not an individual relationship with God. We are relating to God as a nation.
Okay.
I think that's different for you.
I think it is too. And I've never actually heard an Orthodox Jew say that. That's very interesting. I've heard some things about, and I dare say this because I really am not qualified to teach it. I'm just going to say what I've heard, that the Passover, the spring feast, the Jewish spring feast of Passover and Shavuot, one of those is for individual salvation for the Jews. and then the other is for the nation of Israel as a nation. That's all I can say, because that's all, again, I just heard that. I've heard that before from a Jewish teacher. Now, let me ask you something. It's so interesting you say that, because I'm curious to know, in your opinion, regarding the redemption process, two, I guess, points. Has the redemption begun? Is it unfolding now? I think you've already kind of I know, isn't that a silly question? And then the other question is where or what is the role of the nations in the redemption process, the non-Jew? What is our role? Do we have a role?
Well, if you ask me, you hear that freight train that sounds like it's right on top of you? Well, that's about where we are.
Okay. So.
I mean, very clearly, first of all, the Jews are in Israel, against all odds. That's the big one.
That's the big one.
We're in Jerusalem. That's another big one. All the stuff like seeing the fish. The other week, someone took a photo of the wall of the Temple Mount, and they had there's the thorns, the bushes that grow in between the stones, not the western wall, but the other side, which is actually right on a highway, right on a major road, and it had the Hebrew letters Yud, Hey, Vav.
I saw that picture.
The 3 out of 4 letters of God's name. So, like I said, once you start seeing it, you can't stop seeing it, and that's something that people walk by every day and see and don't notice it. And then when I wrote about it, people were like, really? I got to go check this out. And they went to check this out. They're like, wow. I mean, it wasn't even a little bit kind of like the letters. It was like really like the letters. Wow. So I think the biggest example is that that the Jews are back, and we're seeing things happening in the news faster and faster so far as nations. I think we're very, very close. What's the role of the nations? I mean, it's really, I'm sure there are many, many sources, and we've spoken about it. It's really Mila Hashem Alai. It's whoever is for God, come to me. And I think I think that the Jews have a very special role, but there's no source that says, that the Jews are going to be, in the end of days, God is going to be alone. But until then, I think anyone who serves God is going to be there. And I don't think it's a religion thing. I think, I mean, in the temple, you had Jews and non-Jews, I think all together. And I think the people who, it's really not going to be divided along the lines of religion. I mean, when you read about Gog and Magog, it's not religious. They're not talking about religious. They're talking about nations. And another thing. Interesting. Another thing. One of the interesting aspects of prophecy that is coming around. I've done a bunch of articles on DNA testing.
Oh, interesting.
Very interesting, because DNA testing, home DNA testing, 10, 15 years ago, not so much. 20 years ago didn't exist. There's the last Mishnah. The Mishnahs go in, they have orders and they have sections, and there's one section that says Elijah the prophet, who he comes to precede the Messiah. The only reason he comes, Elijah the prophet, why does he come before the Messiah? He comes to push out those people who forced their way in and to pull in those people who got pushed out. I think you guys call it goats and lambs.
Oh. Nations of lambs or goats. Yeah.
And I think that's very much what's going to happen. I mean, something astonishing that's very painful for me is you have very religious Jews who have no desire to come to Israel. That's
That's
so,
painful for me to watch as a non-Jew. I can't understand why they don't want to go. I don't understand.
and there's always been this attitude, oh, when it's time, I'll come running.
I don't
And it's
understand.
like, no, you won't. And who says you'll be able to?
Oh,
So I think the DNA testing, we're finding that a lot of, it's funny, whenever someone comes to me and says, oh, I have this great love of Israel, and then they do a DNA test almost every, I want to say almost every, but every single time, actually, they have some Jewish blood in their background, some Jewish ancestry. I've seen it so many times, it's absurd.
wow.
I'm talking to someone, oh, I'm not Jewish. My grandmother was Jewish, but I'm not Jewish. I know other people, they find out crazy things. I know a Native American who I'd known for a couple of years, and I'd interviewed him because he was a chief of a tribe. And then one day he comes up to me, he says, what's this a picture of? And it was a Jewish book from 150 years ago in Hebrew. And I said, why do you ask? He said, well, I found it in my grandfather's library. And I'm like, really?
Wow.
And it turns out his grandfather was Jewish. I think we're going to find that this realignment is not going to be along the lines that you expect. I think the ingathering of the exiles is not going to be a bunch of Jews who have their synagogue membership and go to the travel agency. I think the ingathering of the exiles is for the most part going to be miraculous.
Wow.
People who didn't know they were Jewish, people who, we're seeing it now. We have the B'nai Menashe coming from this crazy corner of India. They look Chinese. And all of a sudden they're showing up in Israel. The Ethiopian Jews, you're finding Jews all over the world in the craziest places. 10% of South America is Jewish. They ran away from the Inquisition. I think that's what we're going to be seeing in the end of days. You say, what's the role of the nations? Well, which nations? The ones who are the inside or the ones who are the outside? I think we're going to find a lot more people are on the inside, and that the definitions of what's on the inside and what's on the outside are going to be much different than what we anticipated. And I'm seeing that now, aren't you?
Yeah. You just said we're seeing that too. And it just opens up your thinking to see how big God is. And we put such labels and things in boxes. And I think that's very encouraging in what you're saying. I know that's going to inspire many people, Adam, for hearing that.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I said, it has the downside, which is there are a lot of people, friends, family, who not so much.
I know.
It especially pains me when I see religious Jews. I'm like, we're missing something.
Yes.
There's something I see that you didn't. And it was not that way when I was growing up. When I was growing up, Orthodox, conservative, Reform, doesn't matter what, you supported Israel.
Yeah.
And that's not the case anymore.
Isn't that something? Wow. I have one comment to add to that, then I'm going to turn it over. I know we've got some people with questions here.
Sure.
My pastor is Mark Biltz, and I know you know Pastor Mark Biltz. Yeah, I know you love him. I know he's wonderful. He is a blessing, but he's really keen on looking for patterns in the Bible, and
he's good at it.
And he's good at it. That's right.
He's really good at it.
Probably the best I've ever seen, but right. But one of the patterns that I see with what you're saying is when what I've been taught by Jewish teachers is that when the Israelites were able to leave Egypt, not all of them went. Some stayed.
Right. We have the tradition. There's a verse in Exodus that says Chamushim alu mitzrayim, that the Jews came up. It literally means they came up armed with weapons. But the word chamushim comes from the word chamesh, meaning 5, meaning they went up 1/5. That only 1/5 of the Jews came up from Egypt.
Okay.
And even fewer came back from Babylonia.
Isn't that something? So
if
that pattern repeats itself, and maybe this is what we're seeing.
And unfortunately, there's I heard someone say the story. They said that when the Jews left Egypt, there was they had the splitting of the sea, And when the sea came back together, that was it. If you weren't out, you were staying in Egypt.
Wow.
It was the door closing.
Yeah.
So, God willing, the doors will stay open this time, but there's no guarantee.
Right. Wow. Such an incredible topic today. We're so excited to have this conversation. I want to turn to our friends that are here with us on this call to, I know there's questions. If you'll raise your hand, if you have a question, I will come to you. Mike, you are ready. Your hand's up. How are you?
Are you talking about me?
Yeah, your turn.
Okay. Hey, I wanted to visit with Adam about, our borders are totally open now in the United States. And, I've talked to a lot of my I have a lot of rabbi friends. I'm worried about it, but it's like God allowed our borders from Mexico and all these people are coming into the United States. Do you have any viewpoints on that, Adam?
Sure. It's funny that how the lines are drawn and which values each side picks up. This open borders thing, we have a concept of 70 nations. I worked very hard to bring about the Sanhedrin because the Sanhedrin was supposed to be the court for all of the nations, for the 70 nations. And that was actually when Europe started wanting to bring the Jews back to Israel and bring the redemption. They started the League of 70 Nations. And the League of 70 Nations, unfortunately, has gone against its prime purpose. It's promoting abortion. It's promoting a lot of things that go against the Noahide laws. And also, one of the values that goes against the Bible is an anti-nation. They've turned the word nationalism into a bad word, which is kind of hard because the Jews in Israel is the highest form of nationalism. But nationalism is actually a positive, and not only positive, but a necessary element to keep the world in order to serve God. You can't, the world was created in tohu vavohu, with craziness, and God made order. That was the first thing he did. So to go against the order, to break order, is an ungodly. It's an anti-creation thing, and the concept of nation is necessary. If this is the United States, it's a nation. We have our borders. Europe as well. They went very, and it's funny that specifically Germany was the one bringing in all the so many refugees that they destroyed their own concept of nation. So this concept of nation is very, very important. It's something I'd actually like to see stronger amongst the Jews and also stronger amongst the Christians. I don't know how that would work for you guys. And it's something that I think the Jews, unfortunately, we from the exile, we learned to pick up too much from other people, bad things, and to reject our basic Torah values. And so this anti-nationalism thing is picked up by secular Jews.
Interesting. Thank you for that contribution. The whole border issue and the whole, back to Pharaoh, what you said about Pharaoh a while ago, is just on my mind, because I've said this before. The more things seem backwards, like the dark side's pressing in, the more God's pressing in. I mean, it's like this battle between darkness and light. It's so again, the pattern of this is repeating itself. I think we've seen this movie before. And so anyway, I know Ari, I think Ari has a question. Go ahead, Ari, you can unmute yourself, my friend.
Shalom from California.
Ooh.
I feel like I'm an alien over here. Yeah, so I just wanted to just attest to, what Adam was saying. A lot of us, we do have Jewish backgrounds. In my case, it goes back too many generations, though, to mean anything. Obviously we can't aliyah and all these other things, but, we do have this yearning for Israel. And I've just, everything that happens with Israel, I'm just posted every time that happens. Anything, if it's a war or whatever, we're just watching all the time. And I feel like I'm being attacked, because I feel I want to be part of this too, but I can't necessarily do anything about it. But anyways, but I just wanted to ask you, that was just a statement. I have a question though. And my question is, it's kind of an easy one. I just want to know what's going on with the Israel 365 YouTube channel, because you guys were pumping out a lot of good things there for a while, and then it kind of stopped. And so I don't know if you give us an update.
Well, God bless you. I was doing them. I think I was doing them too much. I was doing it every day. There was some amazing stuff coming out. It just every day was too much. And when the holidays hit, I just lost the steam. But thanks to this particular event tonight, I've dusted off the webcam and the microphone, and I'm planning on getting back into it, God willing, this week.
Baruch Hashem.
Ari, I got a question. Who named you?
So this is my Hebrew name, but that's my great-grandfather's name, Ari. But he spelled it R-I-E at the end, as Baudenstein, and he was Ashkenazi. So, yeah.
So what do you mean you're so far removed? What are you talking about?
But it's a Hebrew. It's just I've taken it on as my Hebrew name. It's not my name. So, but kind of yeah.
Sure it is. So let me explain about Adam Eliyahu. In America, you've got your relatives. You got to keep your relatives happy. So you double up on the names. You have an English name and a Hebrew name. And you name your English name after one relative and your Hebrew name after another relative. So when I was born, they gave me the name Adam. That's, if you look on my birth certificate, it says Adam. But at my Brit Milah, at my bris, they gave me my Hebrew name, which was Eliyahu. So Eliyahu was named for another uncle. So that's why it's Adam Eliyahu. So your Hebrew name that's what we all did. Okay, even though Adam is a Hebrew name. And then I found out when I went to get married, my mom brought all my certificates, and it turned out that at my Brit Milah, they gave me another name that I had never been aware of. So I've got 3 names.
I don't feel so bad then. I feel like, like an imposter, but I
mean, taking on a Hebrew name is a hugely significant act. That's not, and Ari is like, that's a pretty pronounced name,
And there's 5 people in my lineage that had the name Ari, and including my, so a lot of different people. So yeah.
That's what I was just talking about a few minutes ago. You're the embodiment of it. Yeah. Why would when the time comes to figure out who's on what side of the fence, I mean, why would you be on the other side of the fence with a name like Ari, that you chose from a family like that? I mean, when I said Israel's a nation, we're also a family. The concept of tribes is the concept of family that unfortunately most Western nations have really moved away from. And it's another thing that, strangely enough, the left is actually targeted their biggest guns against, which is family, which is, if you want to serve God, well, talk to your father, talk to your mother, talk to your brother and sister, so family is it. So you're totally connected to family. Judaism is a family, we are a tribe. So, I mean, you're very clearly connected to your tribe. I think that's fantastic.
Ta-da.
Wonderful.
We'll see what happens. I don't make any promises, but yeah.
I mean, coming in from California, woo!
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I feel like an alien over here, So
this family that you're talking about, we've learned that the word mishpacha means family. Is this right?
Yeah.
So
very good.
Okay. We want to be a part of your family, can we?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. That's what I was talking about. It's the lines are not where you thought they were.
Oh, okay.
And that's what we're finding.
Yeah. It's all changing. Everything's changing. It's like just more into this, like you said, prophecy.
And that's something also, I said we need to bring back the concept of nation. We really need to bring back the concept of family. And that's something, strangely enough, that almost against our will, the Jews have kept. It's something that I think Christians don't understand about the Jews. It's something that I've run into, is when we talk about the tribe of Levi, we know who in our communities are the Levi and who are the Kohanim. It's actually written on their gravestones. And it's the first thing we know. That's why, I mean, I'm a Jew. Why? Because my father told me, and he wouldn't lie about it. My mom told me, and it's something they told me practically every day for my entire life. This concept of tribe and family, it's not, you can't just say, wake up one day and say, oh, I'm a Kohen. That actually recently happened. There was an undercover Christian missionary in Jerusalem who tried to pass himself off as a Kohen.
We heard about that. Yeah, that was
and you can't fake that. It's really such a solid family thing. And pretty soon it'll have serious implications, because if you're from a certain tribe, you get a piece of land in a specific part of the country.
Really? Wow.
So if you're faking it, you're actually stealing land.
Wow. That's not good. Wow.
So the concept of family has to make a comeback. Concept of nation has to make a comeback.
I hear Dennis Prager talk about this a lot. He talks a lot about this. And it's like, listen to you two Jews. It's like, you're saying the same thing.
Yeah. He's also a very devout man.
Yes, he is. Well, we're at the end of our time. Does anybody else have a closing or another question or comment before we say goodbye? Anne, go ahead, my friend.
Just listening, by the way, we have a mutual friend, Gadon Ariel, and he recommended you to me this past week. He said, Anne, you all have to interview him. Well, I remembered Adam. I didn't remember Eliyahu. And so I just texted him. He said, yes, it's right now. So I'm delighted to know both names. But
do you by any chance know Bob?
Oh, yes. Lori knows Bob. She's writing a companion book for Bob.
Yes, let me show you his book. Have you seen his book, Adam?
If anyone, which book?
This one.
I have it sitting on my shelf.
Oh, listen, it changed my life. Okay, I'm writing a companion guide to it. It's so powerful.
Bob, it is. And people don't, it's something that I don't know. Bob amazes me. He's the dearest. Let me tell you, one time I met Bob and he drove me to where I was staying in Jerusalem. I didn't know who he was. And I mean, he's not the kind of guy I'm used to hanging out with. And as I'm getting out of the car to go to the apartment where I'm staying for the night, I have one foot out of the car and he says to me, so who is Rashi for you? And I just turned around. I'm like, well, that's not what I expected my Southern Baptist Texas friend to ask me. And he is so tuned in. And he's the classic example of my relationship with Bob has made me a much more devout Jew. And I'm hoping that my relationship with him has made him a more devout Christian.
Oh, wow.
And he's taught me so much about Christianity without any even hint that he, that he would want me to accept Jesus.
Yeah.
He was the co-founder of the Ninth of Av project,
yes.
which I had a major rabbi, a big rabbi. He said to me that, because as we know, the prophecy is that the 9th of Av will be a day of feasting and joy.
Yes.
And he said to me that the Christians keeping a Christian 9th of Av, not a Jewish 9th of Av, but the Christians keeping a Christian 9th of Av could act as the catalyst that changes the 9th of Av into a day of feasting and joy for the Jews.
That is huge.
It blew my mind. And when I saw that, I realized how big that project really has to be.
Well, we were blessed and fortunate to be a part of this year being the third year Nations Ninth of Awe event led by Bob
Yeah.
Odell.
Against all odds.
Yes, against all odds. And you were not finished. I think you had something else to say.
No.
What about Ann? Ann, do you have something else?
Well, the thought has come to me as we're talking here. What if, where were we 20 years ago? This little group that we're talking about. Where were we 10 years ago? 5 years ago? Could we have had this conversation? What will we have in 5 years from now?
Ooh.
You know,
You guys are pioneers. Are you aware of that? You're like, when you told me we want to have a talk with you, and the basis of us is that we do not want to proselytize Jews. That blew me. It used to be, 10 years ago, oh, we reject replacement theology. It was huge. It was pioneering. You guys are the spiritual pioneers, way out surfing on the edge. You guys are the ones who are going to bring Geula. You guys are going to, I'm counting on you, Psalm 126, you're going to shame the Jews into realizing that it's time.
Let me say one thing, Eliyahu, you're going to have to come. Rabbi Chaim Eisen, and you must know him from Jerusalem because he was involved with the Ninth of Awe a couple of years ago. And he will be here November 8th, 9th at my home. And so will Tommy Waller. Tommy's been here many times, but and Rabbi Eisen has been here a couple of times. Black hat, black coat, rabbi, and yet we have these two individuals, and it's just a wonderful time. I had a Jewish person, an Orthodox Jewish person, say, I can hear the footsteps of the Mashiach in your home. That's one of the nicest things that anybody ever said to me.
Amen. Hey, Lori, can I say something?
Yes.
I talked to Tommy yesterday, and Tommy was invited as a keynote speaker at the first Jerusalem prayer breakfast in Rome, and he said it was unbelievable. And so, Tommy, God is using Tommy Waller to. So I just thought that was, who would have ever thought that Rome would have a Jerusalem prayer breakfast this week?
That's it. And I have to add one more thing to this. We have a special guest on this call with us right now. And who would ever thought a pastor from the U.S. would be on this call because his Jewish friend was the speaker. And we want to say hello to Pastor David Swaggerty. Hello, Pastor David Swaggerty. We're so honored to have you. Please say hello.
Shalom, everybody. It's good to see you. Good to hear Adam speaking. Good to hear all of the
Pastor,
good
I've been
things.
meaning to connect with you for a while, and this is a great forum to do it.
Well,
So,
God willing, I'm going to be in
willing.
Jerusalem the end of November, as scheduled right now.
Well, I don't
So-
come down off my mountain much, but that would be a good enough reason to get me down off the mountain.
I'll be
for
there
sure.
for about 10 days, 12 days when I come,
That's
God
okay.
willing. But it's
Yeah.
good to see everyone. Miriam and I are sitting here just enjoying everything. We got in a little bit late, but we got connected, and I
Good.
just enjoyed hearing everyone speak. And
Well-
Adam, to you especially, I love your wisdom and your love and just the way you present things.
Thank
Mazel
you so
tov.
much. Thank you so much. You should be blessed. I had an interesting thought yesterday. We read the Bible and we look for, the verses that tell us what to do, the mitzvahs. It says, don't eat pork, we don't eat pork. It says, fringes, so we make fringes. But then you look at the verse and it says, you should, bless the nations that bless you. And I'm like, well, why is that not like an actual commandment? Like, I am now required, just as I'm required not to eat pork, I am now required to bless anyone who blesses me. I don't have a choice, just like I don't have a choice to keep the Sabbath. So anyone who blesses me, I am required, obligated by the Torah to bless them back. And we see that when Boaz meets his workers in the field, they bless each other with God's name. So I think that's got to come back as a mitzvah, as a commandment.
Wow.
Amen.
Wow. Amen.
God willing.
Well,
God willing.
it's a great time for us to for you to bless us. Is there a blessing you can give over us before we say goodbye? That would be so beautiful.
Is there a blessing?
How many blessings are there?
I want to say that I don't know. I feel blessed to know you, to connect with you people. It's, you know, really a miracle on so many levels that we can connect through this crazy thing called technology. We can connect when 20 years ago, Jews and evangelicals wouldn't have connected. We are the children of the dream. We are the dreamers.
Wow.
And so we should all be blessed to wake up from our dream, to receive a new heart, a heart of flesh, so that we can serve Hashem in our full joy. Each person as an irreplaceable part of the puzzle that comes together to serve Hashem.
Amen. 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 Thank you so much, Adam. That was very special. Thank you all, friends that have joined us here today. May you all be blessed this week. Everybody have a good week, a prosperous week, and a healthy week. Thank you again, if you're watching this recording, for joining us here on Just Among Friends. Adam, thank you for your time. I know it's late. It's time for you to get to bed. So we wish you a good week. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Have a great week.
bless.
Bless everybody.
God
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Lala Tov.
Lala Tov.
Bye.